Grede has rewritten the fashion business rulebook.
As the co-founder of multi-billion-dollar brands like Good American and Skims with the Kardashians,
She's now revealing the secrets behind her unstoppable success.
I'm the oldest of 4 girls, raised by a wonderful, wonderful single mum. And, you know, I guess life was a little bit tough. You know, my mum did the best that she could with the little that she had. And, you know, I always think about our relationship dynamics as like, you know, she was the dad, I was the mum, and we had 3 kids together. Oh you know, I was a very parentified child, if you like to say it that way. And I have a very, very close relationship with my 3 sisters as a result of that, because I was really part of raising them and, you know, looking after them. I used to get up in the morning and iron 3 school shirts and make 3 packed lunches and send them off to school. And sometimes, you know, I wouldn't go to school myself. I'd be exhausted by that point. You know, I was really raised by a family. Like my mum's family, her sisters, her mum were huge, huge parts of our life.
How do you think your childhood and that experience of taking care of your little sisters has impacted and shaped who you are today?
You know, in so many ways, and good and bad, if I'm honest. You know, I learned at a very young age to take a lot of responsibility for myself, but I was always on very high alert, right? Where I lived wasn't particularly safe. And so you had to think a few steps ahead constantly. But it also gave me this idea that I needed to get far away from where I was. I was very aware that my circumstances would be limited if I stayed where I was from. And so I had this idea that I would need to work really, really hard to get out of this place. But I knew I would, in a way. I just felt like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how this is going to work, but I've got to get out of here.
I think a lot of people feel like that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And so if the person that's listening or watching right now feels that way, but they are not sure that they're going to get out, what would you say to them? Because you have already said 2 things. You've got to take responsibility for yourself, for your life, for where you're going, and you got to choose your thoughts. So if you have this sense like there's more for me, I got to get out of here. I want to have something different, but then your thoughts are like, it worked for Emma, but I'm not that kind of person. What would you say? Well,
you know, the other thing is, Mel, so many people that come from a place like where I come from, there's this sense that you'll be abandoning where you come from, that actually it's the wrong thought to have. You're like, this is who I am. This is where I come from. This is part of me. And what I would say to that person is you don't have to leave where you come from in your heart. I'm still the girl I always was. I will always be that girl. I just left that place. And so you don't have to give up who you are and what made you you if you leave that physical space. You can still be and have that heart of gold and that sense of scrappiness and whatever made you great. And I think that that is really, really important, because that's what troubled me so much, that I would leave the people that made me me, that I would leave those family members and those friends that were so pivotal to me as I grew up. The truth is that those people are with me every single day. Like, that's just who I am. And I would say that, you know, anything is possible if you really put your mind to it, but you are not going to manifest your way out of anything. You have to take those thoughts and everything that you want, and you've got to couple it with something. And for me, that has been hard work. There is no secret. The secret is I had the vision and I put it together with some really, really hard work. And that's what you have to do.
I love you so much. I really do, because there's just a grit to you, and there's grit plus an amazingly huge heart. And so what a beautiful thing to say, that you can change where you are, but that doesn't change who you are.
Exactly.
Love
I'm still
that.
me.
You clearly, there is so much to learn from your story, because you took a very unconventional path to success.
You could say that, Mel.
Yeah. So were you good at school?
I was terrible at school. I was so bad at school. And you know, the interesting thing is I'm severely dyslexic. And I
Same.
didn't find out that I was dyslexic until I was in my early 20s. And so school for me was just always a struggle. It wasn't that I was particularly like naughty or disobedient. It just was so hard. And for me, at that point in my life, I was like, if it's difficult, like I'm just going to push it away. I'm just going to react to it.
Yes.
And if I'm really honest, you know, I had some anger issues that I had to work through, because where I come from, if something wasn't working, if something was hitting you in a place of like uncomfortableness, you were going to smack it out of the way, you know?
Yes.
And that's what I learned. I learned over and over again to react with anger. And so I really had to train that piece of me out. And I've done a lot of work and I've been in therapy since I was 19 years old, figuring those things out.
What were you angry about?
I think that I grew up in a place where blame was just part of the culture. Like nothing was ever our fault. It was always about somebody else over there, this neighbor, the government, nothing. I was never taught to like take responsibility and figure something out. And I feel like they're the cornerstones of my personality now. It's like,
Yes.
I tell my kids, you know, I'm like, figure it out. Like, just figure it out. And taking responsibility is something that it's ingrained in me now, but it wasn't then. And I was angry that there was seemingly no easy path for me. I thought it should have been easier. I thought that because I was working so hard, it should have happened faster. And you have to imagine, you know, I'm 42 now. I've done a job that I love for 5 years, not longer. For 5 years. I've spent my entire career doing things that have been okay and I've enjoyed-ish, but I had never had like the dream of the dream job. I've just kept going and going and going to get closer to the thing that it is that I love. And I think that is maybe not something that we talk about enough in media and society right now. You are on a journey. Like, it doesn't just happen. This idea of overnight success that we've built, especially around entrepreneurialism and around starting a business, like, it's a lovely story, but it's not a career path and it's not really truthful. And so I thought I was owed something. And it wasn't till I kind of got to about 19, I was like, nobody owes you nothing, that things started to fall into place for me. And I'm a mum of 4 now. And the only thing I care about is that my kids care about something. You've got to have something that you feel strongly about. And for me, it was, and will always be fashion. That's just what I loved. But it's always, we have to remember that we have to have something to hope for. Like, that can be anything, but you've got to have something in your sights that you are striving for. And I think that that's really important just as a basic human emotion. You got to have a thing, a goal, an expectation, but something that drives you. And if you cannot figure out what that is, if you don't know what you should pursue yourself. You should figure out, how do I make myself better? How do I eat better? How do I exercise better? How do I get better habits? How do I get better? And that thing will figure itself out.
Why is that important?
It's the key of life, because we're all on a journey. And if that journey is not to leave the world better than you found it, for you to be better than you were when you started, then what are we all doing? Right? We're in a lifelong journey. You know, I'm obsessed with quotes. And one of my favorite ones is, the more you learn, the more you earn. It's a Warren Buffett quote. And I love Warren. I'm obsessed. But I think about that all the time. And I am a person that has, and again, despite my dyslexia, I'm gobbling up information all the time. But it is in an effort to make myself better, to grow myself, to expand the way that I think. And so I say to people all the time, like, that is what you should do. You should pursue the highest version of yourself that you can possibly be. And within that, you will figure it all out.
The other thing I wanted to say about it is, I have no interest in fashion. And I'm saying that because what you're interested in personally doesn't have to make sense to somebody else.
No.
Because it's not for somebody else.
No.
It's for you. And if you don't have that thing that gets you out of bed, then make yourself the reason why.
Mm-hmm.
What is the first step of that journey to pursuing yourself?
So it's really interesting, because I think there's a couple of things that you can do. So let's just put health and wellness to the side for 1 second. It's a huge part of it. But let's talk about what it means to be excellent, right? To be excellent. I really understand the power of, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. And this idea of excellence, of taking it seriously, how you wake up in the morning, of taking it seriously, how you prepare your breakfast, taking it seriously, how you show up in work, how you see people. Like, do you go, morning, or do you go, morning, how are you? And do you listen and respond back? Like, all of these things matter. They matter to who you are. They matter to how you're seen. And they matter to how you're viewed. When I, made sandwiches in a deli, I made the best sandwich. When I worked in the cupboard in a PR agency packing clothes, I would fold those clothes beautifully. My boxes, my tissue was amazing. My sticker was in the middle. I would do it with excellence. Every little thing, because that is what makes people gravitate towards you. When you take everything that you do seriously and you take an element of pride in anything, it draws people in. And, you have to work a lot of dog jobs before you get the thing. Life is very, very long and it goes in chapters. And so what I say to people is be excellent at where you're at whatever you're doing, because that has some kind of invisible magnetic pull.
What happens internally? Because there is the thing that people are drawn to you because it is true.
Because the vibration within you literally changes. Like you vibrate a different energy. If you wake up with a smile on your face and you say, maybe if somebody's in the bed with you, "Good morning, darling. I made you a cup of tea." Like, what does that say? That says, I value you. The morning is good. And here we are together and I just acknowledged you. Like, who doesn't want to wake up like that? And if nobody's next to you and you stretch your arms like this and you put nice pajamas on because you care about yourself and you make your bed and you walk away and you're like, look at that bed. Like that is like, that's the dream. That's what I say to my kids. It's like how you do anything is how you do everything. And that is the key. You've got to sweat the small stuff and you have to start somewhere. And when you have nothing, and I have been there, that works because that starts to set the tone and people notice. They really, really notice.
I want to go back in time.
What is this smell?
So tell us about that moment and what was happening in your life.
Well, I have to say, that was a crushing time for me because I left home when I was 16. The circumstances at my house had just become untenable. And I left home, and home was an hour and a half away from where I lived. So I get this like terrible, high-rise apartment. I had no fridge, no oven. We kept our milk on the balcony because in London it's that cold that you could kind of keep milk fresh for 2 days if you left it on the balcony. And I enrolled at the London College of Fashion. So this for you guys is what you would call senior high. I'm 16, dropped out at 17. And you can imagine I fought so hard to get into that college. And so to drop out wasn't like, I can't be bothered. It was that I couldn't continue. I couldn't make ends meet. I couldn't figure out the train fare. I couldn't figure out how I would eat, how, the couple of days a week that I had to work because you're in college 4 days and then I was working every day. I just couldn't make it work. The math wasn't mathing, as we would say now. And so it was a bitter disappointment. But what was interesting is that actually that's when my life started to fall into place. Because for me, I was like, okay, how do I keep learning? How do I keep close to the dream? And in those days, you could go around and find work placements. And so I thought to myself, I'll just work for free. I'll get as close as I can to the career that I think I want. And I went from, PR agency to designer showroom, like from one terrible bottom of the barrel job to another. And, Mel, I would do everything I could to get these work placements. Like I was sending it, because again, in those days, there wasn't email. So it was just sending letters out.
Yeah. And
nobody was responding to my letters. And so I started hand delivering letters because I was like, maybe they're just not getting them. It was kind of ridiculous. And every now and again, there would be a break.
Kind of brilliant, actually.
I mean, for me, it was just tenacity. And I couldn't even imagine that it was because of me. I never took it personally. I didn't think I'm not good enough. I didn't think, I'm not worthy. I thought they didn't get the letter because I'm so good and I have so much to offer and I'm going to work so hard. They just must not know yet. And so I just kept going and going and going and going until somebody said, yes, okay, like come in, you can work here for free for a couple of weeks.
And for somebody who's listening, who's like, I need that tenacity because I send an email and then I sit back and then I think something's wrong with me.
It's never about you. Mel, it's never, ever about you. And this is the big thing that I want specifically women to understand. We have become, as a group, obsessed with this idea of perfection, that it always has to be perfect, that it always has to be as it is in the movies. And that is just it's not my experience. My whole journey has not been linear. It has been, one great thing happened and then like nothing. Like literally nothing. In fact, sometimes it just went down. But you cannot take it personally because it's never about you. You know, you can fail and it's just the thing. That thing didn't work out. It is not that you don't work. It is not that you have something wrong with you. So for me, I will just like dust myself off. I'll be like, that wasn't my moment. That wasn't for me. It's not my time. And just keep going.
Well, I would also imagine that if you're also feeling the pressure of buying food and paying rent, you also don't have a choice. Like there's a certain level of stress that you feel if you cannot make the ends meet or you barely do because you can't stop.
You have
right?
no choice.
You have no choice.
You have no choice.
And so one thing I wanted to ask you, because what you said about excellence was mind-blowing and 1000% accurate. How do you pursue excellence versus the trap of being perfect? Like, what's the difference between excellence and that perfectionism trap that women get stuck in?
That is such a beautiful question. I think that you have to learn, and this is going to sound, and I don't want it to sound self-limiting, we all have a different measuring stick, right?
Yeah.
What is perfect to you is not perfect to me. And I think that we have to be realistic with ourselves. And so what I've done in my life is really think about myself. I'm not looking in the media, I'm not on social, I'm not in a magazine trying to live up to that version. I'm like, what is my version of excellence based on where I come from and who I am? What's good enough for me? Because I'm not comparing myself to anyone else. You know, you and I both love that same quote, right? It's like, it's you against you.
Yes.
That's it. And that's where you have to be very, very honest and very self-reflective. Because if you are going to be in the comparison game, you will never be satisfied. You will never be happy.
I've always thought about like perfectionism, because so many women in particular struggle with it, as something that you're doing internally.
No, it's coming at you.
Yes.
From every angle all the time. And you have to be very, very careful as a woman that doesn't start to define you, that doesn't seep into you, right? Because the minute that goes inside you, you're in trouble. And, you know, I have this great friend, but she talks about this idea of the most important relationship you'll ever have is the relationship you have with yourself. And so you got to be real careful that your biggest enemy isn't living between your two ears, right? It's like this conversation that goes on all day, that's relentless, has to be kind. It has to be compassionate. It has to be empathetic. These are all things that we give away to other people, if you're a good person, all the time. But it starts with you. You have to give that stuff to yourself first and foremost. And when you start to do that, and when you start a daily practice that says, I am going to behave like this to myself, when I speak to myself, this is how I'm going to be, that rewires you.
I love that. What would you say to somebody that is kind of at the beginning of the journey in their career right now, trying to figure it out?
You know, Mel, honestly, what I would say is that everything you want is on the other side of what you're working towards. You just got to be working. It's all there. Everything you want is there. It's just got to find you working. And that's it. You can't think your way into what you want. You can't wish it. You can't hope for it. You got to do. And that's where this perfectionist trap is poisonous for us. Because if you think that you have to do it perfectly, or it has to come in some, you know, spectacular way, or this thing that you want to do has to be really big, it doesn't. It's like, just start. Just do something, and know that if you have forward momentum, if you are moving in the correct direction of travel, you will get there, but you have to be moving.
And what about if you don't know if you're in the right direction? Like
Then you just go. Because I never knew. And the fact is, sometimes I wasn't going in the right direction. But at least I was going somewhere, because what happens is you pick up all this information along the way if you're smart. And when you make mistakes, again, it comes back to that idea of like, how am I speaking to myself? Because if you treat yourself like a good friend, imagine that your friend messes up, right? She messes up. You don't go, you absolute silly cow. You go, darling, let's talk about this. What happened? I love you anyway. Let's go through it. Where were the mistakes? How are we going to do things differently next time? That's what you have to do for yourself. So know that that is inevitable. And, you know, I've kind of trained myself around this rule of thirds that I have in my head. And that has really, really, really helped me to understand.
What is the rule of thirds?
So the rule of thirds is something that I remember hearing this when I was a bit younger, and it's like I almost live by it. So if you are doing something difficult, if you're chasing a dream, if you are on the road to whatever it is, you are going to be happy about a third of the time. And the other third of the time, you are going to be like, you know, life is kind of all right. And the final third of the time, you're going to feel terrible, Mel.
It sounds like a marriage.
You're going to... Basically, it can be applied to marriage too. But, you know, the point is that we shouldn't feel good all the time, right? It's just part of how we're conditioned right now to imagine that like life is this like, you know, Instagram reel of wonderfulness. And that ain't the truth. So if you can learn to accept, do you know what? On those really bad days when you feel really crappy, you're like, that's okay. In fact, I'm exactly where I need to be, because I'm going to have those days and I'm going to have some of the middling days, and then I'm going to have these great days. And so if you go off track, that's all right, because you have to know that you can come back. And when you're on fire, you also better be real humble, because you're going to know that those stinky times are coming too. So it's a really lovely way to keep yourself in balance. And I think about it probably daily, a third and a third and a third.
The rule of thirds. I love it. Now I'm going to think about it daily. Even though it's been a crappy decade, this is just a third of a third. Like it's just 1/3 of
And
what
Mel,
I'm going to experience.
I love that you say a decade, because people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what can actually happen in a decade. I have been in America for 8 years, this July 4th, and I'm a different Emma, right? Like that 8 years didn't just happen in 8 years. It happened the 30 years before, the 40 years almost before, right? So we have to think about like what it actually takes and time. And I feel like as a young person, you can be in such a rush. It's like, don't be in a rush. Life is long. Life happens in chapters. And so as a young person, all you need to say to yourself is, I am willing to work and I'm willing to accept the direction of travel. And it will be going forward some of the time, and it will be standing on a spot some of the time, and it will be going backwards some of the other time, and all of it is fine.
One of the things that I see from especially people in their 20s and early 30s is that I got to do it all. I got to travel. I got to do this. I got to find the person. I got to figure out my dream career. I got to.
Yeah.
And I love that you're saying when you are young, just slow down.
Well, let me tell you what I really believe works.
Tell me.
We are in too much of a rush. Having said that, your 20s is the time to try some stuff. And that is what I really believe in. I could look at all of my friends now, got a couple of them in front of me, and I could draw a line down the middle of those that are successful now in their 40s and what they did in their 20s. Did they like go for it? Did they take a bunch of risks? Did they work really hard? Did they try a bunch of stuff? And those that perhaps, you know, kept the partying going maybe a little too long. When you don't have responsibility, right? Most of us have children a little bit later now. You don't take on responsibilities in terms of financial responsibilities like a mortgage until a little bit later now. Your 20s are the time to try. And I remember a lot of people saying to me in my 20s, like, you work too hard. You need to have more fun. The truth is, if I didn't do the 20s I did, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yes.
And so you've got to try a few things. And again, don't think that they're all going to work out, but there is a time in your life where it makes sense to put a few bets out there, to throw a few things at the wall, to like go outside of your comfort zone. Like that is the moment. That's the decade, because you're going to spend your 30s like figuring it out. Like, what do I actually want to do, and putting in the hard work.
Yep.
And then hopefully by the time you get to your 40s, you've become proficient at something and you can start to choose your choice. But in my experience, not before that.
Well, what's interesting is I'm sitting here looking at you and you're 42 and I'm thinking, God, at 42, I was $800,000 in debt. I had liens on the house. My husband's restaurant business was going over. I was unemployed, 3 kids under 10, about to lose. Like, that's when my life fell apart.
And look at you now.
No shit. So it took.
Take some time.
Yeah, take some time. And how do you stay motivated? How do you keep the dream alive when the first things that you're doing don't really feel like they're going anywhere?
Yeah. And let's be honest, we all have those times. I had a lot of jobs like that. I really, really did. And what I've always tried to do is find, maybe make up a little bit in my head, but I've tried to find the glimmers, right? Like, where is something in here useful? So you're working, like an office job with some kind of clerical role. You are learning to be organized. You are learning what it takes to be the back office support. You are looking at everything that's happening around you. And let me tell you, Mel, and I know this for sure, the fact that I have done all the bad jobs, the fact that I have been there is what makes me a great leader. Because today, not only can I appreciate every single person around me, I've done those jobs. I know not just what it takes, but I know how it feels. And my staff know that I know how it feels. And there is a different appreciation level for somebody who comes into leadership, having done all of the things. And so not only do I look for those glimmers and tell somebody that, this job that you're doing that feels pretty mundane isn't, because there is value in all work. You just have to find that, and you take small pieces. And I think about my experience now as it's a collective of all the things that I've learned. I learned customer service when I was making the sandwiches. And when I was delivering the papers, I learned the power of the mornings. And when I worked in the closet at the fashion company, I learned how to do a really horrible job with a smile on my face. Just put it on. And it's like all of those little pieces will take you somewhere. And you have to keep in your head and tell yourself, life is long. And whatever I'm doing, it all adds up to something.
Yes.
Just like all your relationship experiences. And it can feel hard when you're in them, but you can look back and say, there was a reason that thing happened.
Yes.
But you've got to understand, hindsight isn't just a fine thing. It's the thing. It's what makes us who we are eventually. So you've just got to keep that in the front of your mind.
That this is leading somewhere.
Everything is leading somewhere. Everything. All parts of it.
What gave you the confidence to stay when you would get into a room where you're like, I'm not sure I belong here, or I'm not sure this is going to work?
The way I was raised was really interesting, because confidence has never really been my problem. I was raised by, my wonderful mum, and she taught me, she was like, Emma, you're not better than anybody else, but nor is anyone better than you. And that stayed with me. And so when I walk into a room now, then, even though with my terrible education, leaving school before I should, even though I'm highly dyslexic, I know my gifts, I know my strengths, and I know that whatever it is that any of us has to bring is valuable. There is value in all of us. And so again, you have to really anchor into that piece of you. You have to believe that you have something special, unique. And even if it's not special and unique, it's what you have to bring. So make the most of it. Figure it out, right?
Figure it out.
Figure it out, package it up, and go in with some confidence that at least there's just not another you, right? There's not another you in that room. So whatever you are bringing into that space is something that's not there, because there isn't another you. And you have to think deeply and carefully about what those things are and what you add to an organization. And I've done all of that. But in the beginning, you've just got to believe that you have something unique to bring.